So we're going to discuss the rejection of the removal of an amendment to continue to fund Israel, about $500 billion elected by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC for short.
She was elected. I can't remember what year she was elected, but she's part of the American, what's the name of the group? Socialists?
Yeah, Democratic Socialist
of America. Group. And she came in a wide, it's supposed to be a true left. They call her as part of the squad, a true left representative. But over and over and over again, she's been a staunch supporter of Israel. That in itself doesn't go against socialism, but she's defending Israel and allocating funds to them for their military. And this is a country that everybody has been charged with genocide, and she's refusing to vote against them. This is problematic for two reasons. Socialism in itself is supposed to be a humane, humanitarian movement. Second of all, socialism says mostly that the resources of your country should be pushed towards the well-being of the society and the collective. But she's defending spending American money in a country which is about to cut spending on education, to cut its defense, is going to cut federal spending in education. She's going ahead to send money to not only for weaponry in another country, rather than focusing on the social ills in America, which a socialist is supposed to do. She's also defending, what was I going to say? Not just sending money, but sending it to a country that is on the list of people that have been charged with genocide and terrorism itself. So this goes against her so-called credo as a socialist. She's a fraud. She's a fraud. Since she's come into, I think she's in Congress or Senate. Is she in Congress? Yeah.
Yeah. She's in Congress. I'm completely shocked. I thought that she was I thought maybe I'm confusing her with someone else. Maybe it's the Muslim lady I'm confusing her with. Because I know that there was some that were vocally
against Palestine. Tlaib is from Palestine, and she stands for Palestine. I mean, Tlaib's ancestry is from Palestine. I think she came here as
Cortez is South American ancestry, so she has no link to the region. So she would be straightforward for her.
Yeah, but she calls herself a socialist. She calls herself a socialist.
She's not. She's a cover for socialism. She's not a socialist.
She's from a state and a city which is heavily supported by Jewish lobby. So basically, she's a politician who's making money coming under the name of a socialist. And this is why I always say that electoral, if you're a socialist, taking the path of electoral politics is not the way to go. You have to be an activist, because once you get involved in the electoral process, that involves money. And clearly she's in the payroll of AIPAC, same as Bernie Sanders. And it's a big disgrace that a so-called far-right lady, Marjorie Taylor Greene, has come out to say that what Israel is doing is a genocide, especially after they bombed the hospital in Gaza. Marjorie Taylor Greene came out. I don't care what her motives are. If it's purely political and she wants to distinguish herself from them just to get votes, I don't care. It's on paper that Marjorie Taylor Greene, a so-called right wing, is taking the stance that, okay, she says October 7th was wrong, but she's also saying the genocide was wrong.
There's only three that aren't AIPAC controlled. There's only three Congress people that aren't AIPAC on both sides, all sides. I think it's only three.
And AOC, who's supposed to be on the left, is standing up, and her excuse is that the part of the funding that they want to cut from Israel is going after their Iron Dome missiles, which aren't offensive missiles. This is bullshit. Even if they're not offensive missiles, because she's saying that's not what's used to bomb the kids in Palestine. She said that the bill doesn't address that. It's still a heinous crime to provide military funding, even if it's defensive, for a country that is involved in what is clearly a genocide. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yeah. I think that there are two sides. There's the socialist and Republican side. Both of them are not funded by AIPAC. I think that for the temporary time, they need to unite to fight against AIPAC. They need to sow the seed, because the American people are hungry to remove the Israeli influence from their politics. That's quite clear. The problem is, how do you go about it when the entire Congress, but three, maybe more, but from what I understand, there's only three people in Congress that are not AIPAC owned. That's horrific. So from that position, how do you manage to change Congress? That's the challenge. And I don't think that MAGA can do it by itself. I don't think the Palestinian Congress lady either can do it by itself. That's two people. That's not enough. But there is popular support behind whatever those two people do. How do they manage to manifest? It's like a new race. It's like the left and the right are now in a new race. And this race now excludes AIPAC. It's like Genesis.
Yeah, but Kule, here's the thing. In America, there is no left. The Democrats aren't the left. So what you're going to see, and this is my prediction, the right will be the one to break off from AIPAC. They've already shown.
I'm saying that there's one that Marjorie Taylor Greene is not AIPAC sponsored. I do believe there's one Democrat, at least one that isn't AIPAC that is not AIPAC sponsored, and now whoever that
maybe
is,
Rashida Tlaib,
maybe Tlaib. So that's going to be the opposite end of the spectrum.
But here's the thing: the Republican Party, especially the MAGA movement, whether they're AIPAC backed or not, they're going to start cutting funding for Israel. I'm pretty sure of it. Or not, but they're going to start taking a stance against it because the economic situation in the U.S. is dire now, in which those guys will not be voted in. They have to answer to their populace. So the point I'm making is that the Democratic voters aren't putting pressure on the Democratic Party to go hard against Israel, whereas the Republicans are. Because remember, the Republican movement is made up of people who live in rural areas. They don't care about Israel like that. They think about it biblically, but they don't believe that during this time when America's falling behind China and jobs aren't there, they don't believe that Israel is a priority.
They're basically floating voters. They can go left or right on the issue.
Yeah, but they're not going to go left because the Democratic Party is lock in step with that, and it also is focusing on identity politics rather than the economy. So the way I
didn't mean left or right by social means. I just meant whatever opinion.
There's no true left in American politics, except for the Green Party, maybe. But so when we say left, what we mean is the liberal Democrats, which is not really left. That's more of it's supposed to be what is up and down, authoritarianism versus freedom. So the Democratic Party supposedly stands for freedom because they stand up for anti-racist bigotry and they stand up for gay rights, but they're not a left economic movement. And funny enough, for another show, the Republican Party is closer to the left when it comes to economics, to be honest with you. But what are your thoughts, Afolabi?
Yeah, basically the amendment was a fallout of an Israeli strike on a Catholic church. And you look at...
Sorry, I made a mistake. I said a hospital. It was a church, yeah.
Yeah, it was a church. And there seems to be no end in sight to Israel's impunity in Gaza. And you look at the vote, and it was overwhelmingly in favor of continued support for Israel. $500 million. I don't know how the American economy is going to sustain this if they continue to do it. And then critics argue that even if the U.S. aid is for defensive systems, it still enables Israel to continue their international genocidal campaign in Palestine. Now, if you look at this, whatever it is that AOC is saying does not make sense. She seems to be talking from both sides of her mouth. She's still supporting Biden and Harris in principle, who also supported Israel in this campaign. And that's why there's a lot of public backlash, because she appears to be a hypocrite in all of this. Now, if you look at this, it's not going to help America. Somehow, America under Trump's word would have to stop this funding because it's just going to lead to, America. It's going to cripple the American economy. Yeah. And the genocidal campaign is not ending anytime soon.
So let's go back to what Martin Luther King said. And also, I think it was Eisenhower. They both said that the U.S.'s turn or pivot to becoming a war economy is going to destroy the country spiritually. When Martin Luther King was killed, it wasn't because of civil rights. It was because he was beginning to have socialistic tendencies. He wanted to have strikes in America, and he also was against the Vietnam War. So we see in one consistent since after World War II and since after Korea, the U.S. is an imperialistic security state whose whole existence and economy is based on military spending at the expense of social welfare. We saw, remember the thing I sent you, Afolabi, where in Washington, D.C., 100 cars were shot by kids with automatic rifles fighting over territory. And they were fighting like, you know, when rats take over a house and they eat the food and nobody challenges them. That's the level of gangsterism you have in America now. The police don't come because the kids have machine guns and they're shooting, and it's black neighborhoods. So the point I'm making is that the U.S. is a war economy. So I doubt that they are going to change. That bill, which was an amendment, was to take $500 million from a bill that was already $800 and something billion. That's how much the budget was. And funny enough, it was close. I think when you look at the bill, it was passed, but it was close, 218 to 209 votes for a bill for $800 billion. Now, probably other people who voted against it might have voted for it once they took off that $500 million from Israel, and they only want to do that because the optics aren't good now because Israel's involved in a genocide. But this is a bigger problem, going back to what you said, Kunle, and that there's not going to be a shift in America, especially when people like AOC get elected and become socialist heroes, so-called socialist heroes, but they're actually just capitalists. She spends most of her time on Twitter dissing Donald Trump. But when Biden was bombing and killing people in Palestine, she supported him. And then she lied and said Harris is trying her best to bring a ceasefire and to bring the hostages. She wasn't focusing on the human cost, which is why I say, so people think socialism is only an economic movement. No, it's a humanitarian movement, because what motivates socialism is that we want all human beings to do well. That's why we want
welfare.
State control.
Welfare.
Welfare. So if you're a socialist, you can't be a socialist if you're not standing up for the welfare of anybody within your country and by extension other countries, because socialism and imperialism can't live together. This is why the Soviet Union has been fighting imperialism ever since the Bolshevik Revolution. What are your thoughts, Kunle? I'm just going to end with this.
Yes.
AOC is a fraud. And AOC, more than anybody, is one of the most evil politicians in America, because it's worse. What Trump tells you who he is. But when you come as a lamb and say that you're a socialist and you care about human beings, but you're actually working for the enemy, you're more dangerous. You're more dangerous than the outright bigots like Trump.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Kunle?
I think it's almost impossible to fix imperialism from the inside, because the likes of AOC and Bernie Sanders, they came in promising real change, but over the time, then they ended up defending many of the same policies that they once opposed. If you look at the Democratic Socialists of America, they are weak. They don't seem to want to break away from the Democrats. So it's mostly playing safe and letting people vent their frustration, basically. And when identity politics are used to distract from deeper issues like, blaming white men for Kamala Harris' problems while ignoring her support for war and Wall Street, it just ends up protecting the very system we're supposed to be changing. And it's so sick. That's
why I said it has to come through activism and through the
exactly.
I've always argued that there needs to be a new branch of the government. The new branch should be the citizens themselves, People's Labor Union or something like that, which is not funded by money. Because once money comes in, it corrupts it. All right, guys. So we're going to have to do